I call the honourable member for Tangney.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Climate change science relates fundamentally to two issues: feedbacks and data. The issue of data is critical. Without accurate data, the testing of various hypotheses relating to feedbacks becomes moot. It would appear that, to an extent, the IPCC, or Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and the Bureau of Meteorology, or BOM, play fast and loose with the data. I have recent correspondence with the BOM where they state, when questioned about temperatures in Australia, that the temperature data prior to 1910 was unreliable. While this may be true, it is also true that the IPCC, in their reports, use global average data that goes back to 1850. We're asked to believe that the IPCC, of which BOM is a very active participant, is rigorous in their science, data and fact-checking. So the question is how to reconcile unreliable Australian data prior to 1910 with supposedly reliable global data going back to 1850. Let's assume that Australia, prior to 1910, had the most unreliable data on the planet, inferior to that in Antarctica, the world's oceans, South America, Africa, much of Asia and so on. Even then, you still have this large chunk of the planet's area covered by Australia for which the data is unreliable. How then can global average temperatures going back 60 years prior to 1910 Australian cut-off be reliable? I asked BOM this very question and they did not respond to that question at all. Given this problem, I would ask the BOM, when they advise the IPCC in writing that Australian temperature data prior to 1910 was unreliable. Hence, the IPCC global average temperature data prior to 1910 was similarly unreliable. What was the IPCC's response to this information? These are critical questions. The fact is, taking data from 1910, you have a warming period from 1910 to around 1945, which was of similar magnitude and rate to that of 1975 to 98, after which, contrary to the models used by the IPCC and by the IPCC's own admission, there's been a hiatus or a halt to the warming. Leaving aside the unexplained cooling that occurred from 1945 to 1975, the simple fact is the warming from 1910 to 1945 cannot be blamed on CO2. What of the manipulation of data by BOM so that stations such as Darwin, which cooled over the last century when raw data are used, suddenly has over a degree of heating when massage data is used? I have read the transcript of a recent panel discussion that took place under the auspices of the American Physical Society, the body representing American physicists. The discussion was in relation to the drafting of a position statement by the APS on climate change, and the guidelines had some very interesting questions. I would urge anyone interested in climate science to read the transcript. It gives a very good idea of where the science is. And they also make the point that accurate data is critical and that many sources of data are inadequate, such as the oceans. The reason I mention this is that the lack of warming in over a decade is said by alarmists to be due to an unpredicted take-up of this missing heat in the oceans. Why did this mechanism only become operative in the last decade and a half and not between 1975 and 1998? What is that mysterious mechanism? Why is the supposed heating not demonstrated by an acceleration in sea level rise as would be expected? Why is there a lack of an upper tropospheric tropical hotspot predicted by a positive water cycle feedback and related to the moist adiabatic? Why is it that over a long period of time, global temperature trends can only be explained and understood if feedbacks were negative? These are questions that need to be explained before we spend a fortune on mitigation policy. There needs to be a formal audit of the BOM's and CSIRO's data handling processes as a first step to be conducted by the Bureau of Statistics.